Andy, it seems like the Mets are picking up some steam here in regards to their managerial search. Can you give us the latest?
Yeah, this thing's moving right along toward a conclusion, Sal, I think probably by next week. So the second round of interviews started yesterday, Wednesday, with Carlos Mendoza getting a callback interview. That included a long day with David Stearns and the organization, meeting with Steve Cohen. So big deal. Mendoza, obviously, serious candidate. Another serious candidate, Craig Counsell, had the same experience, or perhaps currently is wrapping up the same experience today, Thursday. That's his day. The Mets aren't giving out any information on this, piecing it together through league sources. I can tell you that I believe there are one or two more of these. I don't have the names yet. I know that Mark Kotsay, the A's manager, has been involved in this process to some extent. I know the Post reported Andy Green, the former Padres manager. Not clear if he's getting that call back. The way this has gone is phone conversations last week. A lot of people got that we haven't heard about and probably won't got cut out at that point. And now a few of these in-persons this week. And then probably a hire by, we're in the GM meetings next week. By the end of that, I would expect the Mets to have a manager, if not a lot sooner.
I mean, we've heard a lot about Craig Counsell being the guy, and I was kind of interested to see who Plan B was going to turn into, because you don't really know what you have until who's the one that got away, if Counsell is, in fact, the one that does get away from the Mets. And I think that's still a possibility. I'm wondering how much of a real possibility that is, some of the factors that go into he wants to raise managerial salaries across the board. Do you really do that with Steve Cohen's money? I mean, I don't know if that's the market where that's what you're trying to accomplish. That might be more of a Cleveland thing, but I do believe that Counsell and Stearns is the perfect marriage. They just have to get it done.
All right, Andy, talk about Mendoza. How has he become such a serious candidate?
He's really good. He got a good reputation. He's interviewed well in a lot of places. He's one of those guys that's been in the mix for a while. Red Sox interviewed him before they brought back Cora. Very impressed. Alex Cora's special manager. You know, a couple of those situations. He interviewed with the Giants just a couple of weeks ago. Was doing really well in that process, and then the Bob Melvin thing happened. So it was going to be Melvin at that point. He's just one of those guys who's on the up and up, who knows how to collaborate with the front office, which I know is you have a term for, Sal.
Yeah, data applicator, right?
But he's his background. If you dug into it more, you would probably like more than that, because he's minor league player, minor league manager, came up in player development. Infield coach. This is a dyed-in-the-wool baseball guy, but he's only 43 years old. He knows all the new stuff, too, and he's just a really strong candidate. He's also a finalist in Cleveland, as is Counsell. So, actually, a lot of balls in the air here, and it'll be interesting to see how they all drop, but between those two guys, you'll probably get a Guardians manager, a Met manager, and just see how it all shakes out within the next few days.
Actually, one of the names outside of Counsell that intrigues me is Kotsay.
Yeah.
I feel like he could be. I'd probably rather have him with the experience than Mendoza, even though Mendoza seems like a decent candidate.
I'm sorry, you know where Mendoza has experience that none of them have, including Counsell? He's been at Boone's right hand for a couple years. He knows the pressures of New York. He knows. So Aaron Boone and Craig Counsell they're basically the same guy in a lot of ways. Intelligent, well-spoken, ex-player, been to a few division series, an LCS maybe even, never a World Series. Craig Counsell's a genius, Aaron Boone's a moron. What's the difference? where they manage, right? That's the only difference.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, they're both really good managers, but you see what I'm saying. Carlos Mendoza, more than anyone else in this process, understands the unique meat grinder of managing in New York, because he's watched Boone, people calling for his head when people in the game consider him one of the better managers. Really no different from Counsell in his results.
All right, well, speaking of managing in New York, let's make the call to the bullpen and welcome in someone who actually did manage in New York, Terry Collins. Terry, does Mendoza's experience in New York outweigh Counsell's or Kotsay's managerial experience?
Not for me. Not for me. I don't know the guy. I don't think I've ever even seen him. He probably is a great guy, but you know, when you sit behind that desk, there's a lot of things that come by that or across that desk that the bench coaches have no idea about. And those are the things about managing in New York that are you know, that's why, you know, all the times we've talked about the managerial process, I've said, I think they got to get a guy who's managed before. I think it's just important in this town. Okay, Craig Counsell hasn't had to deal with 15 sports writers every night, nor has Mark Kotsay. But you know, they've had those other things come by and by their desks, and have had to bring a player in. I don't know how many times Carlos Mendoza has brought a player in and had to have a sit down man-to-man, you know, chat to see if he can straighten stuff out. So, you know, when you're a coach, you kind of get closer to the players than the manager, who's got to sometimes sit down and you know, have a different kind of chat with you. So I still think He may get the job. I don't know, but I would still be leaning towards a guy who's had the job before.